Breaking news tonight, a family member tells News 8 the son of Raymond Childs Jr. is the 17-year-old that was arrested for killing 6 people inside an East Side home.
Just a horrific story. News 8 Sierra Hignite is here now with the latest developments. Sierra?
Yeah, I got off the phone with that family member just a few moments ago. They tell me that 17-year-old is believed to be the only person responsible for the murder of the Childs family and the death of a pregnant woman on Adams Street.
In the early hours of the morning, a gunshot shatters the stillness of a family home. A father's last words, "I'm sorry, Raymond. I love you," disappear into the silence of the night. For one 15-year-old boy, those words would become a haunting memory, the final words from the man who was supposed to protect him. A boy who in that moment was forced to run for his life, fleeing from his older brother, the one person he had trusted most. What happened inside that house on Adams Street was like nothing anyone could have imagined. A single act of violence that would rip apart a family and leave an entire community in shock. 5 lives were lost, and the boy who survived would be forever scarred by what happened in that house. But what drove Raymond Childs III, just 17 years old, to unleash such destruction on the very people he called family? But before we begin, I want to thank you, my amazing viewers and subscribers, for your support through your likes, shares, and comments. Your engagements help make these stories more meaningful. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. Now let's get started, shall we? The story of the Childs family begins in the late 1990s when Raymond Childs Sr., an aspiring artist in the music industry, met Kezzy King. Raymond, with dreams of making it big, had already been managing his own record label. Kezzy, a woman with her own quiet strength, brought balance into Raymond's life. Together they formed a union not only of love, but of ambition. Raymond Sr. was a man of many talents, but music was his true passion. By 1999, he had found his soulmate in Kezzy, a woman who shared his dreams and desires. They married 7 years later, blending their families into one cohesive unit. Kezzy became a mother figure to Raymond's children, treating them as her own. Together, they had a large family, with a shared focus on nurturing their children and guiding them towards success in life. The Childs household was far from ordinary. Music was the heartbeat of the home. Raymond Sr. not only worked in the music industry, but also created a rap group with his 3 eldest sons, including Elijah, his oldest. They called themselves New Street. The sound of their music filled the house, and the family, united by their shared love for the art, rehearsed together, wrote lyrics together, and dreamed of making it big together. Elijah, the eldest son, was the one who stood out in the family. Unlike his younger brother, Raymond III, Elijah was gentle and quiet, with an old soul. Despite the noise and hustle of growing up in a home full of music and creativity, Elijah's demeanor was calm, protective, and introspective. He had already begun to carve out his own path in the music world, performing alongside major artists and even opening for them in Indiana. His drive and ambition were evident, but what stood out even more was his love for his family. At just 18, Elijah was already a father to 2 children. With his pregnant girlfriend Kiara Hawkins, expecting their 3rd child, a boy they had planned to name Chaos, Elijah's dreams of family and success were well on their way. He had ambitions not just for himself, but for the younger generation, wanting to help guide them through the challenges of life. Raymond III, in contrast to his older brother Elijah, was a young man who was struggling with his identity. He shared his father's love for music, but his path wasn't as clear. As much as Raymond wanted to make a name for himself in the industry, his rebellious streak often caused friction at home. Raymond was caught between wanting to pursue his music dreams while simultaneously battling the expectations placed on him by his father. But his inner turmoil ran deeper. He often felt misunderstood and alone.
Man, it's nothing but pressure every time that I drop. Man, I heat up the stew and I heat up the streets. Pops did a lot, but he done with this music. I told him say less, they gon' hear you through me. Back on their ass, ain't sparing no nigga. That's just how it is and that's how it's gon' be. Knew it was up and they knew it was stuck when a nigga had tugged and he broke off the leash.
But in the background of all this was Kezi. While Raymond Sr. was busy managing his label, Kezi worked tirelessly to keep the home together. She was the glue that held the family unit intact. Despite her nurturing nature, she was often overshadowed by the loud, bustling life that music and ambition brought into the house. The family, while full of dreams and talents, was not without its struggles. The children were raised with high expectations and constant pressure to succeed in the music industry. A pressure that, for Raymond III, began to feel suffocating. Elijah's rising music career contrasted sharply with Raymond's more rebellious and turbulent life. Elijah seemed destined for success in both his personal and professional life. His desire to protect his family, his growing role as a father, and his ambition to succeed in the music world marked him as the steady one, the one who was going to make it. Raymond III, on the other hand, struggled with fitting in, both in his family and in his own skin. It wasn't just about the music for him, it was about identity, family, and acceptance. Raymond III felt suffocated. Every day it seemed like there were more rules, more boundaries, and fewer ways to break free. His tension with his father, Raymond Sr., grew with every clash, each one more intense than the last. The little things, the minor rebellions, like sneaking out to stay at his girlfriend's house, became bigger issues in his mind. These small, defiant acts fed into his growing frustration, creating a gap between him and the family he once felt connected to. It was just a matter of time before one of those small moments of rebellion ignited something far darker. And on January 23, 2021, it did. That night, Raymond decided to take his father's car without permission. He spent the night at his girlfriend's house, fully aware that his father would be furious. It wasn't the first time he'd bent the rules, but this time, there was something different about the feeling. Maybe it was the mounting tension, or maybe it was the defiance that had taken root inside him. When Raymond Sr. found out, he did what any father would. He called his son and demanded that he return home. It wasn't just about the car, not anymore. It was about respect, about boundaries. And for Raymond, this wasn't just a call for him to come home. It felt like another attempt to control him, to keep him in line. And that was something he couldn't stand. The phone call was more than just a request. It felt like an ultimatum. And for Raymond, that call was the spark that set off a firestorm. He was furious, embarrassed, and tired of feeling like he couldn't make his own choices without someone else telling him what to do. The frustration he had built up over time, the pressure of expectations, the weight of his father's rules, all of it came crashing down. However, Raymond Sr. decided not to confront the situation right away, possibly hoping to address it in a calmer moment later. He simply told his son that they would talk about it later. No one could have predicted that this seemingly small decision would soon lead to unimaginable devastation for the family. So, in the early hours of January 24th, 2021, a tragedy of unspeakable proportions unfolded inside a seemingly ordinary home in Indianapolis. Raymond Childs III, his heart full of anger and frustration, picked up a gun. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, but rather the culmination of years of tension between him and his family. His mind, already clouded by rebellion and resentment, pushed him into a corner where no words could stop him. He first went to his parents' bedroom. His father, Raymond Sr., had no chance. At point-blank range, Raymond shot him. His stepmother, Kezzy, who had been lying next to Raymond Sr., was the next victim. She, too, had no time to defend herself. But Raymond didn't stop there. After taking the lives of his parents, he turned on his younger siblings. Elijah, his 18-year-old brother, was in his room, unaware of the horrors unfolding. In one quick moment, he too was shot, his life extinguished before he could even react. The tragedy deepened as Raymond moved to his 13-year-old sister, Rita. She didn't have a chance to run or scream. Her life was taken just as swiftly as her siblings. And then there was Kiara Hawkins, Elijah's 19-year-old girlfriend, who was nearly full term with his child. She was in the living room when Raymond turned on her. Kiara tried to shield herself, but the bullets were merciless. In that moment, she wasn't just fighting for her own life. She was fighting for the life of the child she carried. Sadly, both of them, Kiara and her unborn baby, were taken. But what's perhaps the most chilling part of this nightmare is what happened next. Raymond didn't stop there. He hunted down his 15-year-old brother, Xavier, who had heard the gunshots. Xavier ran to the laundry room hoping to hide, to survive. But Raymond was relentless, so Xavier had no choice but to run out of the house. But he pursued his brother, and when he found him, he shot Xavier in the arm and leg. Xavier, terrified, begged for his life. He offered Raymond money, anything to save himself. But Raymond, without hesitation, shot him again, narrowly missing his head. Xavier, bloodied and broken, managed to escape. He ran, desperate for help, until he reached a neighbor's house. But Xavier's survival wasn't just a miracle. It was the only thing that allowed this horrific story to be told. His testimony would be key in uncovering the truth, and the community, once shaken by the sound of gunshots, now found themselves reeling from the knowledge of what had just unfolded inside a home they once thought of as normal. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department arrived at the scene, and what they found was beyond anything they could have anticipated. Inside the house, they discovered the bodies of 5 family members: Raymond Sr., Kezzy, Elijah, Rita, and Kiara Hawkins. But there was no time to process the magnitude of the tragedy. Not yet. The most chilling detail? The shooter wasn't some intruder or stranger. The perpetrator was Raymond Childs III, the very son of the victims. And the only survivor, Xavier, had already pointed the finger at his brother, naming him as the killer. As the investigation unfolded, the police traced Raymond's car to his girlfriend's house. When they arrived, Raymond's girlfriend explained that he had returned to her place after the shooting, claiming his father had kicked him out. But her suspicions began to rise. Less than an hour after Raymond's return, she received a notification on her phone, a shooting alert near Adams Street. She asked Raymond about it, but he denied any involvement. It was at that moment she knew something wasn't right. But the investigation didn't stop there. Police soon found out that after the murders, Raymond had tried to dispose of the murder weapon. A gun, hidden in the house, had been taken by a family member after the shootings, who later handed it over to law enforcement. But the most damning piece of evidence came from Raymond's own actions. He hadn't just fled the scene and hidden. Raymond had left behind a clue, a magazine clip, which was later recovered from the floor of his girlfriend's car. Police traced it back to one of the weapons used in the killings. The firearms, one a Draco and the other a 9mm handgun, were both found to be linked to Raymond's family, though Raymond didn't have a license for any of them. The investigation pieced everything together. Despite his attempts to cover his tracks, Raymond had left a trail of evidence, each clue pointing back to him. But the most critical evidence came from the surviving witness, Xavier, who had bravely provided police with an eyewitness account of the massacre. When Xavier spoke to police, he recalled in painstaking detail what had happened that morning. He described hearing the gunshots, then his father's final words. "I'm sorry, Raymond. I love you." He heard his father scream those words as he was shot in the bedroom. He remembered fleeing the house, begging for his life as Raymond chased him. His testimony was both heartbreaking and crucial. Later that day, Raymond was apprehended at a relative's house. The investigation was swift and relentless. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His lies had been exposed, and his fate was sealed. After the tragedy that unfolded in the Childs family home, Raymond Childs III was on the run, but not for long. Hours after the massacre, Raymond was located at a relative's house in Indianapolis, and police arrested him without incident. Raymond was charged with 6 counts of murder, including the murder of his father, his stepmother, his brother Elijah, his sister Rita, Elijah's pregnant girlfriend, Kiara Hawkins, and Kiara's unborn child. He was also charged with 1 count of attempted murder for shooting his 15-year-old brother, Xavier, who miraculously survived the attack. The case took a dramatic turn during the trial, which began after a mistrial was declared in July 2024. The mistrial occurred due to a confrontation in the courtroom when a witness, Alonso Valles, a cousin of Raymond Sr., directly asked Raymond, "Why did you do it, Raymond?" The emotional outburst by Valles was seen as inappropriate and left the jury shaken. The judge had to declare a mistrial, stating the incident compromised the fairness of the trial. This was a pivotal moment in the legal proceedings, and emotions ran high as families waited for a chance to see justice served. In October 2024, the case was retried, and Raymond was found guilty of all charges. The courtroom was filled with anguish as family members and loved ones tried to come to terms with the fact that Raymond, once a member of their family, was the one responsible for the senseless killings. Raymond's defense was that he was innocent, maintaining that he didn't commit the murders, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Raymond's conviction marked the beginning of a long, painful journey for the families left to mourn their lost loved ones. Xavier, the lone survivor, was left with physical and emotional scars that will last a lifetime. After being shot in both the arm and leg, Xavier managed to escape, running to a neighbor's house for help. He was rushed to Riley Hospital for Children, where he was treated for his injuries. The emotional toll on Xavier was unimaginable. He had witnessed his entire family's destruction, and not only did he have to survive the physical trauma, but he also had to process the gut-wrenching reality that his brother was the one who had ended their family's life. Xavier's testimony in court was crucial to the prosecution's case, as he was able to directly identify Raymond as the shooter. He told detectives that he heard him. "I know it was him," when asked about the identity of the shooter. The families of the victims expressed their heartbreak during the trial, each grappling with the grief of losing a loved one in such a violent manner. During the proceedings, Raymond's behavior in the courtroom added another layer of emotional turmoil for those affected by the tragedy. At one point, Raymond was seen crying and expressing remorse, though his actions did not seem to sway the families, who struggled to comprehend how the boy they once knew could commit such violence. As for Raymond, he stuck to his story of innocence, telling the court, "I'm not no killer, I'm not no murderer, I'm not a bad person." Yet his denials couldn't erase the overwhelming evidence that pointed to him as the sole perpetrator. A combination of cell phone records, witness testimony, and physical evidence, including the murder weapon, left little room for doubt. His brother, Xavier, identified him as the shooter in open court, providing the most damning testimony against Raymond. Raymond Childs III faced a litany of charges. He was charged with 6 counts of murder for killing his father, Raymond Childs Sr., his stepmother, Kezzie Childs, his siblings Elijah, 18, Rita, 13, and his brother's girlfriend, Kiara Hawkins, 19, as well as the unborn child she was carrying. Raymond was also charged with 1 count of attempted murder for the brutal shooting of his 15-year-old brother, Xavier, who survived the attack. But despite Raymond's insistence on his innocence, the case was clear. The jury found him guilty of all charges in October 2024. The courtroom was tense as the verdict was read, with family members of the victims quietly breaking down in tears. The justice system had spoken. Raymond was responsible for the deaths of 6 people, including his own family members. Raymond's defense attorney argued that he should not be held fully responsible due to his age, pointing to his mental health and history of trauma as possible mitigating factors. They also highlighted the fact that Raymond was only 17 at the time of the murders, a factor that would later play a role in his sentencing. His defense also touched on a history of domestic violence and abuse, which they claimed could have contributed to his actions. But the court was unswayed by these arguments, and Raymond was sentenced to 360 years in prison on March 10, 2025. His sentence was broken down into 55 years for each of the 6 people murdered, including Kiara Hawkins' unborn child, and 30 years for the attempted murder of his brother, Xavier.
I'm not no killer, I'm not no murderer, I'm not no bad person. And a lot of people honestly...
Tonight, Raymond Childs III is maintaining his innocence.
But still, he is going to prison for 360 years for murdering 6 of his family members.
As Raymond Childs III faces a lifetime behind bars, the tragic loss of 6 lives weighs heavily on everyone involved. For Xavier, the pain of losing his family and the horror of what his brother did to them will never fade. The emotional impact on him and on the entire community will last a lifetime. The court's decision to charge Raymond as an adult and sentence him to such a long prison term reflects the severity of his crimes. He will never walk free again, and the repercussions of his actions will echo through the lives of the victims' families for generations to come. But this case also leaves us with larger questions about the role of mental health, family dynamics, and violence prevention. Could this tragedy have been prevented? What could have been done to stop Raymond before the violence escalated? In the end, the death of Raymond's family was not just a personal tragedy. It was a loss for the entire community, a family torn apart by a moment of unthinkable violence. A young man, who once had his entire life ahead of him, now faces a future behind bars.
Tomorrow there will be a visitation for an East Side family killed in what the mayor has described as a mass murder here in our city. The visitation for Raymond Jr., Kezzie, Elijah, and Rita Childs will be held at Crown Hill Funeral Home and Cemetery Thursday afternoon. It will begin at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and go until 8.
And for those who knew the victims, they will continue to carry the weight of this devastating loss. One of the things being raised is whether the violent songs Raymond was exposed to played a role in shaping his mindset, making violence seem like his reality.
Very concerned about music that promotes gun violence and what role that may have had in this particular crime. Pastor Kenneth Sullivan Jr. has been combing through several music videos like the one which reportedly involves the 17-year-old shooting suspect. Now, the lyrics on the song glorify using guns to kill people.
Unlike his older brother Elijah, who had enrolled in a mentorship program promoting peaceful, non-violent music, Raymond was surrounded by music that glorified violence, which may have influenced his actions. The scars left behind by this massacre are deep, and healing will take time. But one thing is certain: the lives lost will never be forgotten. If you found this story as heartbreaking and eye-opening as we did, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching,